So I will now read probably a couple of pages of the wizard spell. I'll read the blurb on the back first, then I'll read a couple of pages of it. Then I'm going to tell you briefly about two of my stories which aren't related to magic and mysticism and spirituality, just because I wanted to give you a bit of a rundown on those as well. So I'll read you the blurb on the back of the wizard spell. The wizard spell recounts the actions of a man in psychosis who believes he is casting a spell of love over the city of Newcastle, Australia. The story details his strange rituals as he harnesses the forces of nature to enchant his apartment with the essence of universal love. Right. Now briefly, the dedication. This story is dedicated to all the people who believe there could be more to this existence, the practitioners of magic and spirituality, the seekers of truth and knowledge, the witches and wizards, the mystics and the priests, the sorcerers and the shamans. May your faith that the universe holds some greater meaning guide you through this life. Right. Now I'll read a little bit of the wizard spell to you, then I'll talk about the other books. The wizard spell. In a small bedsit apartment in the coastal city of Newcastle, a man sat on his worn lounge. He had a pointy nose and pale skin. A black leather jacket clung to his body with its hood pulled over his head, and a silver pentagram hung around his neck on a long chain. The man had lived in this small room for years now. In that time he had gone to great efforts to transform the space into a place of magic. He had spent many hours covering the walls with symbols of ancient mysticism. Crystals and stones sat on the benches, and there were candles in every spare spot. A blue sheet with a pentagram sewn into it hung on the wall, and paintings of strange creatures sat around on the chairs below. In front of the man were two odd-looking tables. One was a desk with a tree stump resting on it. The other was the metal base of a lava lamp with a symbol sitting on it. On top of the symbol was a salt lamp and tea candles burned around its edge. Deep in thought, the man stared through the glass door that led out onto his balcony. There sat another table. This one was built from 4 wheel rims stacked on top of each other with a round piece of wood stuck in the middle. This table had candles all over it as well. Looking at the altar, the man could see his little ghost mask glued to the top rim. As he watched, its eyes lit up, flickering bright blue as it let out a wicked laugh. Hearing the noise, the man chuckled to himself. As the toy stopped laughing, he stood walking over to his stereo and hitting play. Then one of his favourite band's Tool came on. The man then sat back down, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a cigarette. Opening the pack, he stuck his fingers in and pulled out a thick cannabis smoke. The sitar strings and electric guitar riffs of the music rang across the room as he sparked his lighter and the joint burned. Drums thudded, echoing behind the celestial sounds, and the man smiled as the vibrations passed through his apartment. The mystical music hypnotized him, taking over his body and making him feel as if he was being possessed by spirits. The music was putting him in a trance, and he was ready to merge with the astral realm. As the song played, he stubbed out the joint in his ashtray, stood from his lounge again, and walked over to his bed. Lying down on the sheets, he placed his arms behind his head, relaxing as the THC ran through his body, and began altering his mood and thoughts. As he lay listening to the music, the man meditated, pondering the universe. He wondered how it all began and whether it would ever end. He tried to comprehend its infinite nature as he imagined distant planets that he knew he would never visit. Suddenly, a shocking energy ran along his spine, and then he was lifted up into the air. Looking down at the bed, he could see he was above his body. Panicking, he glanced around and realised he was surrounded by a glowing grid. Staring forward down the rows of intersecting blue lines, he saw that there was no end to their depth. It was as if he were facing down infinity. Time had stopped and he felt lost between dimensions. As he studied the glowing web, he realised it was pulsing with energy. His instincts told him this was the underlying structure of the universe. Staring at the endless pattern, he felt mesmerised by its glory. Then suddenly it disappeared. As the grid vanished, the music entered his ears again and he was back in his bed. Realising he had returned to his body, he felt shaken but excited. The song had changed now and the stereo was playing Someone, another occult band he listened to. As the haunting vocals flooded the room, he pondered what had just happened. He had been studying these sorts of mystical experiences on the internet. He knew this vision was a sign that his psychic powers were improving. Now I'll just end there and I'll just briefly say that was an out-of-body experience which I actually had. As I was describing the story, I was lying in my bed, smashed out of my mind on cannabis, and then all of a sudden I was above my body and I was surrounded by a glowing blue grid. Now, from my point of view, whether that is a hallucination or some sort of spiritual experience, it happened to me. It was very real to me, and that's why I was so convinced of these, that I had these mystical powers, because things like that were actually happening to me. So that's what I'll read from the wizard spell. Now I'll finish up in a moment. But just briefly, you've heard today and the other day all about my spiritual psychosis series and my novel Kings of the New Age, which also deals with mysticism. So just briefly, I've also written 1 Minute to Midnight, which is a letter written by a man just as the nuclear war unfolds, and he is accounting the last few days of his life as they wait for the radiation to bombard Australia. He is with his family and they're very scared for the future, so he's writing a letter about that for future generations. It's based on The Beach, which is an old Australian movie which some of you might be aware of, where a similar scenario plays out. So that one is 1 Minute to Midnight. And another popular story I've written, probably my most popular, in Newcastle, is Saturday Night on Beaumont Street, which is another fictional memoir. And Saturday Night on Beaumont Street, again, is an amalgamation of events that happened over a larger period of time, crammed into one fictional few hours. And it's about busking and street performing on Beaumont Street in Hamilton on a Saturday night, and all the wild things that happen. So they're both very popular stories as well, and they're $15, and I have a Square reader so I can take card payments, as I've said before, so come and see me if you'd like to buy a book. Now I should probably take a few questions, and then I'll finish up. Does anyone have any questions?
Just
yes?
to comment, some of those things that to me are very, very valid and true. There's a real mixture there of what I believe to be true mystical experiences and delusion, both happening sort of almost together.
That's right,
That's
yeah.
how I perceive it.
Yeah, thanks, cheers.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. How do you kind of delineate between them? Like, would you say that one is definitely a delusion and one is definitely a very real spiritual experience?
Yeah.
Like,
I think you can only tell the difference in hindsight, because when I was immersed in that thinking, I was convinced, and there was no separating me from it. It was all real and it was all spiritual, and I was in touch with God, and that was what was happening. So it's only in hindsight that you can really reflect on that and decide whether or not it was a real experience. So, yeah.
So, but the out of body was?
Oh, absolutely, it happened. Yeah, I was
the
very...
others, not so much.
Some of the other things happened. I heard the voice of the angel as well,
Yeah.
which happens later in the story.
Yeah.
But is that real or the product of my imagination? I don't know. In hindsight, you're less immersed in what's happening and you can reflect on it.
Yeah.
But it's all very real when it's happening.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
I've got another question.
Yes.
So, you know how there's a lot of ancient cultures who might, say that they might have had similar experiences, even like connecting with gods or, different kinds of fabrics of the universe or spirituality. What's your kind of commentary on that? Would you say that there's a possibility that there could be some mental health, that maybe wasn't understood as mental health back then, but we now might interpret as mental health issues or delusions?
That's exactly what I think, because I think it's weird. In ancient times, in many ancient traditions, the schizophrenic in the tribe was given the role of shaman and psychic and seer, and also we're starting to learn now that drug use of psychedelics was interpreted the same way in ancient cultures. So it's a shame that it's probably not real and valid, because at least it gave people with schizophrenia a place and a status in the community, which made them a valued member of the community as the one who had the gift to communicate with the spirit world. Because definitely some ancient cultures, from my research, definitely did make those associations, but now it's called mental illness, and that's probably more valid. Depends if you're an atheist or whether you're open-minded, and that's all okay, we can discuss that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely think that's something that was happening in ancient societies, and now that's mental illness. And I think somewhere in the middle might be a better way forward to giving people with these visionary experiences some sort of role in the community. I use it all to make stories, and I think that's what we should be teaching people who have hallucinations and delusions, to sit down and write a story about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting.
Yeah.
I've got a question.
Yes.
As part of your recovery, Nate, how do you use creativity to put yourself on a journey to recovery? Like, is that integral to who you are now?
Yeah, because I write books and then I'm going to get rich. So then that makes it all okay. Then it's all okay. No, but it's good to tell the story and to make something exciting about it, which people can engage with and enjoy, because it means that it wasn't for nothing. Like, if I didn't have that massive psychotic episode that went on for like 2 years, I wouldn't have written these stories. So it's almost like it was all meant to be anyway. And it's also interesting because I have a lot of support from Reliability, the disability service I'm with through the NDIS. And if I hadn't had that psychosis, I would have never ended up with Reliability, doing art and creativity and the things I love in the studio where we're able to produce real content. So in a funny way, it all worked out for the better anyway. And yes, I said I never would have had these stories, never would have written them, wouldn't have been able to share these experiences. So it's some strange way, it's all worked out for the better anyway, you know what I mean? As if it was fate or destiny anyway, even though it's not, because those things don't exist. So, yes.
Perfect.
Any other questions?
I'd like to say thank you very much. I think you are very brave in opening up yourself, sharing the stories with us, but putting it down on paper as well to share with many others. I think it's a help to humanity, definitely. And I love the way you were wanting to channel love into the city of Newcastle for everybody to love
Yes.
one another. And I wish there was more people doing just that.
Thank you.
Yes, that's 100% spot on.
Thanks, cheers.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Nate.
So, Nathan's